Commissioner of Police, can you tell us in broad terms how happy are you with the way that the Gibraltarian community has and is responding to the new set of rules in place for social distancing reasons and public health reasons?
I am very pleased from the feedback I get from the frontline officers that the majority of the population is compliant, understanding and quite praising of the efforts that our frontline officers are discharging during these challenging times. There are a few that no doubt breach the regulations, but we are dealing with them. We are dealing with a lot of tact and with proportionality. But in general terms, I'm pleased to say that the general population is content, and I am content with the policing style I adopted.
With people spending much longer at home, have you seen an increase in certain complaints, such as noise pollution, for example?
Yes, regrettably, those are indicators of frustration arising from these community safety measures that have been implemented. And we ask that people be moderate in the way they behave indoors if it's a question of playing loud music. But we're keeping a close eye with that. Again, we are engaging with neighbours, and it's not the time to have neighbourly disputes. It's a time to value the family household and get on with neighbours, even though when you stand outside the balcony you can communicate, but be considerate and moderate with how nuisances can be caused.
In keeping with that sort of community approach, you are also asking people to get in touch if they hear anything happening in a neighbour's house that they think might be concerning.
Indeed. The police is the public and the public are the police. Sometimes we do rely on the eyes out there in the public to report concerns and in this case potential domestic abuse occurring in the neighbourhood. If there are any concerns of neighbours of a neighbour or a relative in danger of abuse, please do not hesitate to call them up and to call us up, and we will take that along with whichever route is the most appropriate, because this is not all about policing. There's a strategic plan in place chaired by the Minister Sacramento with many strands, not just the judicial strand. There are many strands of support with counsellors and methods that don't necessarily involve the police. But we are part of that strategy, and people should not fear of coming forward and disclosing that they have an issue, because there is support, a considerable support network now, more so with COVID-19 measures in place to deal with those matters. If there is any reason to call us in the case of an emergency, our number is 199. That's a 24/7 manned emergency line directly to the police. And if it's not an emergency, but there is some concern that you have that you want to bounce off or receive some form of other route to address your concerns, it's 200 418 18.
Well, essentially what the RGP did a couple of weeks ago, way before a number of measures were implemented, was to have a business continuity plan. So we implemented a strategic business continuity plan for the organisation, which addressed issues of capability and capacity to be able to police Gibraltar in the event that the pandemic would affect us as an organisation. So there's been a lot of work in the background in that regard. We've been working very closely with external partners. We always work with external partners, but we've had to do a lot more now. Seeking assistance from our external partners, and a lot of good work has come out of that. Additionally, communications has been extremely important, so I've been leading the communications forum for the organisation. You will see us more active in social media, and obviously with yourselves in GBC, but it's important to support the message that's been coming from Her Majesty's Government of Gibraltar and the Chief Minister, to ensure that the message is sound and the message is right across the board. And then, of course, business as usual within the organisation. The strategic direction of the organisation is very important. Business continues because criminals continue to commit crime. So we've had to ensure that we have our plans in that regard continuing.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the external partners that you've been working with and how they've assisted.
Well, at an operational level, we've been working very closely with our very close partners, which is the Gibraltar Defence Police, and we are being supported now by her customs officers. They've been supporting us in controlling people and controlling traffic and implementing the measures in order to reduce the amount of people that are out on our roads in Gibraltar.
And in respect of communications, what are the most important messages that the RGP is pushing?
I think the most important message that we have been pushing out is to, first of all, most importantly, being aligned to what everyone else is saying, particularly from Her Majesty's Government of Gibraltar, but also ensuring that people are aware of the criminal activity that continues to happen in Gibraltar, even though we're going through this pandemic. So those are the key messages.
Okay, and in short, how much has COVID-19 changed what you do as Assistant Commissioner?
It's changed a lot more work, and it's reduced the output that I've been able to do with regards to other business. But hey, we continue to do more with less time, and you adapt very well. And we're very grateful to the workforce because we've had to do a lot of changes to the way we police Gibraltar. We've changed our operational stance. We've changed roles and responsibilities of certain individuals. Where they're not needed most, they are needed in other areas now. So we're very grateful to the workforce in that regard.
Well, it's changed in the sense that we've had to understand what we're facing. My role as the Planning and Development Support Division basically looks at the logistics side of the business, so supporting the front line, making sure that our officers who are out and about, or even those that are working at Newmill House, for example in our custody teams, have the correct equipment, the appropriate equipment to deal with the situation that we're dealing with. So it's involved understanding what the risks are, what the impact of dealing with people who may be COVID-19 positive is on our working environment.
In brief, we've seen some officers wearing gloves, masks, but I mean, what is the official line, and when does protective equipment become important?
Well, it's important as soon as we know that somebody is COVID-19 positive, of course, and it's taken a while to properly understand the picture. I mean, one of the things that my division's been doing is collecting the guidance that we've been supplied from the UK, from policing and bodies in the UK that have looked at the impact of the disease on policing generally. So we've been conscious, of course, that we need to localise that, and we've run through all the advice through the public health in Gibraltar to make sure that we're not out of step with what the Director of Public Health is asking us to do here. The advice to officers is that they need to obviously be aware of what the risks are. It's obviously a dynamic risk assessment that has to be carried out anyway, because you never really know what you're dealing with until you start dealing with the incident itself, so to speak. So officers are all equipped with the PPE that we've deemed relevant. Our vehicles, for example, have bags with PPE, which they can use for different situations. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all, if you like. There are various pieces of equipment in there which will allow them to tailor the response depending on the situation that they're dealing with.
And this would be overalls, gloves, visor?
Exactly that. Overalls, gloves, visors, face shields, so all of that. Yeah.
Well, as Superintendent for Crime, we're responsible for all serious crime investigation in Gibraltar. And during the COVID-19 restructure of our organisation, we've redeployed our crime division into three sections. One group comes in from 8 to 4, another one does 4 till 12, and we have a third group that works from home as far as possible. This allows us to provide some resilience and support of our operational officers as and when the need arises.
So if we move on then to gathering intelligence on what's happening from a day-to-day basis, given how quickly things have been changing, that must be particularly important.
Yes, one of the functions that we have responsibility for is the intelligence department, and every morning we brief the commands team as to what's happening out in the community. So we monitor social media, we report on that, we report on infractions of the COVID-19 regulations and restrictions, persons that have been arrested, challenged, and what else appears in social media that might be of interest.
So what sort of thing on social media might pique your interest?
Well, we see things about people complaining about noise, for example, people complaining about people being out, people being challenged, but by and large people are very supportive of the policing of the COVID-19 restrictions.
Relevant to mention, should anyone have a complaint in respect of loud noise or concerns about people breaking the lockdown regulations, what should they do?
They should report it to the police on 72500.
Tell us about the agencies and organisations that you're working with and what you're doing.
One of our particular areas of concern during this period are those people that are more vulnerable in the community. And because of the enforced social restrictions on movement, people are spending, obviously, by the very nature of this, a lot more time within the home environment. So we're very conscious of the fact that people may be more exposed to instances of domestic violence or other forms of abuse. So we monitor this daily and we report on any incidents of domestic disturbances that come to our notice. We also work very carefully with our other agencies, with the Care Agency, with the Gibraltar Health Authority, the Education Department and the Ministry for Equality. We're setting up a virtual hub where we can exchange information in real time in order to address concerns as soon as it is possible.
There has been a fair amount of international coverage on domestic abuse, and we have heard sort of messages of caution because people are spending so long at home now. How worried are you that this is actually going to become an issue in Gibraltar?
I think worried isn't the right word. We're conscious of the fact that there may be an increase in risk and we're addressing that by preparing for it. We've been very fortunate in Gibraltar that we haven't seen the rise that other communities have seen. But we're always alive to the possibility that the longer the restrictions go on for, the longer it's likely that there will be instances of disturbances.
I told you not to laugh at me.
Relevant, I suppose, then to remind viewers that should they be getting cabin fever and feeling that the four walls in their homes are sort of becoming oppressive, they are allowed out to do exercise and to walk the dogs.
Yes, certainly. I mean, the government's very clear on what you're allowed to do, and Gibraltar is unique in this situation that people are allowed out to exercise, to take their dogs, to do things that other jurisdictions aren't allowing.
And that can help, right?
Certainly.
And in respect of working with outside organisations such as the GHA, what sort of roles have you taken on, and what collaboration is necessary?
Well, I think one of the best things that we've had with the GHA is that they've helped us to manage our own resilience. So, of course, we were very worried when the situation started developing about how our officers would react to in terms of falling ill, of course, how they'd react to the problem. So we managed to set up a system where they would advise us directly of who was ill and what the isolation periods were, etc. So we can manage and understand what our resourcing picture is moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And is that of concern at this moment in time?
It isn't, in comparison to the wider UK policing family, where the ones with the least sickness in our organisation. In fact, out of the total complement, including civilian staff, today we have 2% of our staff off sick, but not just with COVID-related matters, but in totality.
I mean, it could get worse, but at the moment you're perfectly well staffed to deal with policing.
We are perfectly well staffed, as you say, and we have plans in place, of course, to develop our policing posture, if you like, if resilience becomes an issue moving forward. It would involve initially more readjustment of our officers' deployment. So perhaps our crime division would be absorbed into frontline policing, or elements of the crime division, depending on. Those plans have been well rehearsed and are written out, but perhaps I shouldn't go into them in detail for obvious reasons.
I mean, one of the things that you might be doing well, given the low sickness rate, is maintaining good cleaning and making sure that there is limited risk for the infection spreading within New Mill House and within your resources. So tell us how you're approaching that.
Well, essentially, we've had to put a regime in place, as you say, to use your own phrase, to make sure that our areas that would be in contact with the public are kept as clean as possible, and everything is disinfected. So, obviously, our entrance points have been looked at. We've placed gels and sanitizers at all the strategic points. But also, our custody suite is one of the areas of most concern. Now, you'll know that the courts, for example, have reduced their business, if you like, to the most important or essential cases. And that, in effect, is having also an impact on us, because we are also operating in the same way, with the same intent, of course, to try and reduce the load on both the courts and ourselves. So, notwithstanding that, people will be brought into custody and have been brought into custody over the last few days. So we need to ensure that if somebody who is COVID-19 positive has to be brought into custody, and of course the community needs to be reassured that we won't hesitate from dealing with anybody who's COVID-19 positive. If they need to be brought into custody, they will be brought in. So it's a question of providing the officers in custody with the appropriate PPE, and indeed the detained person, if that's also the case. But also have a regime which we've implemented and have in place to disinfect the cells that they may have to be placed into, and any other rooms that they may have to be in during the time that they spend with us.
Okay, looking ahead to the long weekend, life is not normal at the moment. But if it were, people would be looking to spend time with their families, if the weather's good, out and about, Commonwealth Park, maybe the beaches. What's your message to somebody who might be inclined to do that if the weather is favourable in the coming days?
We will continue to dissuade people, and we will still encourage people to stay home for the purposes of saving lives. We are very aware of what the good weather could bring, and therefore we're going to treat all those leisure areas and the beaches in very much the same way as we are treating our roads and streets right now. So we are going to be dissuading people from and controlling access to those leisure areas and beaches if the weather is nice and people decide to venture. I hope they don't, but there will be control measures to prevent that area being used for recreational use against the spirit and against the provisions provided by the emergency regulations.
Can you just maybe spell out what would be an appropriate use of the beach or Commonwealth Park?
Look, and the regulations allow for exercising of pets, for exercising of the human self, and for taking children out for that purpose of exercise. The beach is not there to be used for picnics, for playing in that regard, and any other activity which you normally associate with going to the beach. You can swim, but then come back out, and that will be about it. We are not going to be allowing people to continue using that area, that lovely area, I must say, for recreational purposes. Not this time around, not this summer, unfortunately. And I plead and ask the community to oblige to these, because it's not going to last forever, hopefully. But let's make a concerted effort, because together we'll be able to beat all this.
To be clear, then, swimming, quick swim, fine. Could you go there with your children? Could you sit down and let them run around a little bit, as long as you stick within your family unit?
Look, exercising of children is very therapeutic, and also in a small household, we're going to use a lot of tact and good humour. There's a lot of that in abundance right now under the realms of what we are working with. So the individual officer now is becoming an expert at dictating who is trying to abuse the system or not. But what I must reiterate is that control measures will be in play at the beaches, and we ask people to respect that.
and you don't want to make arrests. You've said that that's not the end game here, but you can't rule them out.
Absolutely, it would be regrettable the day that we have to go out every single day to enforce the regulations. We are asking people to exercise self-responsibility, because with that, the public is policing itself, and that's what we encourage. We don't want to resort to arrests or reporting people, and that causing probably more angst amongst the community or the particular people that's been. We don't want a confrontational approach, but we will have to step that up if need be, and I just hope that we don't have to get to that stage. Good weather coming around the corner. Let's not lower our guard. Not at this point. We're doing very, very well. Keep home. The purpose is to save lives, not to overwhelm our GHA, who are doing a great job and are ready to take this virus head on. But we need everybody's help to do that. And we are just trying to communicate the government and public health strategy and messaging. And don't take it against the police officer. He's doing his job. And I think that we're doing a very good job, and I thank the majority of the public for understanding and supporting us.